On the morning of the 16th of August 1842, two men rode out of Skipton. They were the magistrates Hastings Ingham and Thomas Birbeck. They rode out towards Colne, where they met a group of over 3,000 people. This group was a group of striking workers from Lancashire, from Colne, Burnley area. They asked, "What are you doing? Why are you coming to Skipton?" And the response was, "We are coming to shut down the mills." Unsurprisingly, two men on horseback against a mob of 3,000 hungry, worn out, angry Lancastrians didn't really dissuade them. And so the group continued into Skipton. And this is where they ended up. Bellevue Mill, one of the oldest cotton mills in Skipton, owned by the Dewhurst family. 300 people crowded into this very courtyard. William Smith, one of the leaders, ordered that the plug be pulled. Mr. Dewhurst, confronted with 300 hungry, angry, and armed with sticks and batons. These were armed people, well, with sticks. And if you are confronted by 300 people with massive chunks of wood and they are looking pretty hungry and angry, I mean, I think Mr. Dewhurst did the right thing. I think the conditions of his mills maybe weren't the right thing. The people also demanded money. Mr. Dewhurst's son, I imagine, being quite intimidated, handed it over. They then moved on to the next two mills owned by the Sedgwick brothers. The first mill was a new mill on Sackville Street, and it was a care home for a while. Recently, isn't it? Yeah. It's on Sackville Street. It's the big mill. This, because it was a new mill, when they attempted to do the same methods of going and pulling out the plug and shutting down the furnace, they couldn't actually find it because it was in the heart of the mill. It wasn't somewhere obvious. They were sort of trying to find it and just couldn't, and so I think they just gave up and they left. The third and final mill that they came to was the one just behind me, High Mill, which is the oldest cotton mill in Skipton. When they got here, William Smith had some tools which he handed over to a young boy and ordered him to pull the plug on this mill. Mr. Sedgwick objected to this, but then again, like Mr. Dewhurst before him, when confronted with a lot of angry workers with big sticks, decided, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. And so the boy pulled the plug. The group raked over the fires under the boiler and turned out all of the workers so that the mill was shut down. They weren't done there though. The crowd started demanding that money be given. Mr. Sedgwick was like, well, okay, who do I give the money to? And William Smith was allocated the leader. Mr. Smith then demanded a sovereign, around £4,000 in value in today's money. Mr. Sedgwick gave them the sovereign so that they would go away. £4,000 up, the crowd left. After the 300 men left High Mill, they joined their compatriots here on Skipton High Street. At the time there was 3,000 people milling about Skipton. The town folk had been warned that this was going to happen, and so they had battened down the hatches, they closed the blinds. Reports say they locked their doors, which, wow. They were going into local shops, begging for food, trying to extort people, being like, we'll leave if you give us money, we'll leave if you give us food. Eventually, another magistrate, the guy whose son now is a statue on the high street, this guy, this dude's dad, he stood on the steps of the old town hall in Sheep Street and he read out the riot acts. This was a big moment for him. This was his big moment. Sovereign Lord the King chargeth and commandeth all persons being assembled immediately to disperse themselves and peacefully to depart to their habitations or to their lawful business upon pains contained in the acts made in the first year of King George for preventing tumults and riotous assemblies. God save the King or Queen, because I think Victoria was Queen at the time, but the riot act was made when there was a King. But God save the Queen. Everyone ignored him, like everybody ignored him. The riot act was also read out in every pub, so including the several pubs on this high street. And it wasn't until a man called John Settle came and offered them food and beer if they wanted to move to his field that the crowd eventually dispersed from Skipton High Street. As the field destined to be Big Tesco, they started eating. The magistrates at this point rode down, were accompanied by the army. The army had been there the whole day, just kind of like chilling in the background, not really doing anything, just like, alright, yeah, whatever. These guys are doing their thing. And it was at this point, after the riot act was read again at the field, and they were again ignored because why would they listen to them when they've got food and beer and a nice place to set up camp? The army took action. The ensuing fight basically went like this. Army fixes bayonet, starts walking towards group of people drinking beer, eating sandwiches. Group of people drinking beer, eating sandwiches, see army coming towards them and leg it. The group who stayed behind started pelting stones at the approaching army, throwing sticks, and it wasn't really a fight, but unfortunately one man did get very injured. The leaders of the group were arrested. But it was a bit of a shock for the local townspeople. According to reports, it took them several days to recover from the shock of being invaded by people from Cole. Yeah.